Hey everyone, Jim here, Boots and Whiskey Podcast. Thank you for joining us today. We have the ever so lovely Kylie Blakely on the show today. Um, what does she have to do with country music? Everything and nothing all at the same time, if that makes sense. So she was on a reality show for Fox. Um, she has done a lot in the rodeo world, and she's doing some incredible things in Florida that we're going to talk about. Um, and with Western culture, like she just fits. Okay, we're gonna get into it in this episode, and we get into it early. Um, you know what? I'm not saying shit because you're gonna hear it. Long story short, I insult this poor girl right out of the fucking gate, and I apologize for the whole episode. So just hang tight with us. Um, Kylie, thank you so much for being on. You've become a huge friend. Everything has been, I appreciate the hell out of you. This is our first, not our first, but our first YouTube video episode that we've put out here in a while. So thanks for being here. Happy Thanksgiving to those in the States. Um, and that's really it, guys. We don't have a lot to go over here today. This is one of those episodes that I've been saving, and then time got lost on me, and she texted me the other day and was like, "Hey, when's that coming out?" And I was like, "Now." So thank you everybody for being here. If it's your first time here, welcome. If it's your 277th time here, welcome back. Follow us on all of our socials, Boots and Whiskey Podcast. Bootsandwhiskyentertainment.com is the website. That's it. Next week, I think we're going to have another audio episode coming out. I'm not sure which one. I think there's only like 2 or 3 left of strictly just audio. So that's coming. What else? What else? What else? That's it. Oh, we saw Shane Smith and the Saints over the weekend, as well as Charles Wesley Godwin last Thursday. We'll talk about those on the flip side. So sit back, relax, enjoy. If you're watching us on YouTube, thank you for being here. If you're listening to us in your car or at work or whatever, earbuds. Cheers.
That's great.
Yeah. So what's up?
I'm just living life 8 seconds at a time. How about you?
That's that. I feel like my life's at like 4 seconds at a time.
Oof, I can't imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is gonna sound crazy, but like, what are you doing? Why are you here? What are you doing here, Kylie?
You know, that's a existential question there.
Right?
But I in the ag space or in the Western influencer, and I say that very loosely space, or if you give me a little bit of clarification,
Well,
I'd love to get
like
into it with you.
it's really whatever space you want it to be, right? Like,
All right.
you and I connected via Instagram for whatever the hell reason. I don't even know
I
why.
think it was a shared interest in music is
Okay,
what it
that
was.
fine, right? And then I was looking into your shit, and like you have a grasp on this like Western culture.
A loose grasp, but yes, I have a little bit of a grasp, but thank you for the
Yeah,
compliment.
yeah.
I appreciate it.
So like how because you're from Florida, right?
I am.
So how does now this is going to show my ignorance, right? How does a girl from Florida get into this Western culture? Because you don't. I mean, I'm from the North, right? I'm a
Right.
Northeast guy. I don't think Florida, and I don't think rodeo.
A lot of people don't, and that's the funny thing is Florida did cowboying first, and I don't care what anybody says, we did it first. We started farming and ranching here as early as Ponce de Leon and settling St. Augustine area in North Florida. But if you look back at some of the agricultural space across the United States, a lot of it has a deep root in Florida, and it gets
Really?
overlooked so often. And I think that's
Yeah.
because maybe the tourism, or maybe it's just Disney and developments.
Sure.
But we had Spanish cattle. Citrus came later. And the cool thing is seeing stuff like the Brayford breed of cattle, which was genetically engineered in the United States and in Australia, and that actually came from Fort Pierce area, Florida. When they originally collected the cattle, they drove them through what is now known as Disney and Osceola County, where I'm from, and it was the Adams family down in Fort Pierce that genetically engineered the Brayford breed, and then it was nationally recognized. And a lot of kids that grew up in FFA would know that. I think in the 60s.
Wow.
I know. Who would have thought
So
Florida?
I I no, not at all. Like
So
my
people
whole
overlook Florida so frequently when it comes to agricultural spaces, and it's as recent as, and I think you might have seen this on my socials. I was on a dating show very briefly called Farmer Wants a Wife on Fox. I
you
was on
were?
season one. I was.
See, I see. So I do an awful job at digging into my guests before they come on because, like, I want to hear your story firsthand. You
Yeah,
know,
no, a lot of people
I
bring
don't
it
want to
up.
dig and be like, I knew she was going to say that. Like, fuck that. I want to hear it from the,
You want to have
from the
like a
whole.
real authentic
Right,
conversation
right,
where we
right.
just get to the nitty gritty pieces of
That's
it.
right.
But
That's
I was
right.
on season one of Farmer Wants a Wife on Fox,
So
and
obviously you didn't find a.
oh no, 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 no. We ended up being really good friends, but I was pitched something that didn't entirely um end up being the final product. I thought I was going on like Yellowstone-esque or maybe like Bachelor in Paradise where like it's all the different people and then you can mingle and you could see where like the relationships take you or if there's
Okay.
even a chemistry there. Landon and I, we did have some chemistry, obviously. I was very lucky to be on his farm. We became very, very good friends, and we actually attended Megan, which was another girl on the show's wedding together. There was a lot of friendships that came of it, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity. But one of the things that really struck me to my core, because prior to being on the show, I didn't really share my social media platforms with agriculture at all, really.
Sure.
And people were commenting on Reddit and on Facebook and on all these websites talking about the show and about me because I was, again, very blessed to have the screen time allotment that I got from Fox. I'm still incredibly grateful for that. But they were saying that Florida, what does a Florida girl want to do with a farmer? What does a Florida girl
Right.
have anything to do with cattle and I was like, well, we have everything to do with it. Florida is built off of the agricultural space that it is, right down to Disney and I mean anybody that grew up here when you drove down 192 or even Claremont up until recently, you would see orange groves and you would see cattle everywhere. And when I came back from North Carolina, which I lived there for a brief period of time, one of the things that really hurt me is seeing all these family owned ranches that are now a neighborhood. And then driving down where my brother used to live and seeing all the cattle from Deseret Cattle and Citrus, which is the second largest cow calf operation in the United States, which was based out of my hometown, seeing it getting sold off parcel by parcel and becoming apartment complexes and
Sure.
developments. And it struck me to my core that if I don't speak up and share my platform, it's going to start disappearing. So when I came back from the show and people were commenting all that stuff, I was like, you know what? I'm going to wedge myself into this space, even though I grew up adjacent to it. I didn't do FFA, I didn't do 4 H, I didn't do anything. But now, as an adult, I can do something to help conserve this way of life and talk about why it's important to shop local, support local farmers and ranchers, why it's important
Yeah.
to instill a respect for farming and ranching in children. That way they can further understand where their food comes from and not just where their food comes from, but why it's important
Right.
to the community. So I decided to come back and do that. And
Yeah.
here I am pretty much 2 years later after we wrapped season one. And I've had the amazing opportunity to speak with some farmers and ranchers here. I started a little mini series on my YouTube channel where I go around farm to farm and I interview people and I talk about how they got involved. And one of my most recent ones, which I'm very excited to share, was with the Spinoza family, which is connected to Florida's natural orange juice. And I think they're a fifth or sixth generation orange grove operation.
Damn. So let me get this straight, all right? And again, this is for me first and foremost because it's my fucking show, and and second, maybe for the people listening. Um, Now because like people outside of Florida, right? And I think this plays a part in it. And please do not take offense to this. I think this is
Oh, by all
just
means.
me trying to sum it up. Like a lot of people outside of Florida think that people from Florida are just stupid, right?
Oh,
Not to
yeah.
put
Florida man,
not to
Florida
put
woman.
right,
Yep.
right. Not to put too fine a point on it, but that's what you hear, right?
Of course.
Um, and then you think of stuff of like, in like South Florida, like I know me personally, like I think like once you get south of Disney World, because that's as far as in Florida, Central Florida is as far as I've gone, like you think Everglades, you think swampland, more or less,
You think
right?
swamp people, you think
Right,
Everglades, you think
right.
Miami. GTA
Right.
6, you know.
Right. And like as far as I'm concerned, it's like Central Florida stops at Kissimmee, and then
Yes.
it's like just nothing in Miami. That, and I think
I
that's the
mean,
common. I mean,
it's not
we're
too
not
far
far
off.
off,
It's a lot of
right?
swamp. You're not too far off. There are ranches there. When you're driving down 95, you could see some of it. You go through Kenansville, you see a lot of it. That's actually where I get my blueberries, is from Kenansville. They have the Swamp Cabbage Festival, which if
I'm
you
sorry,
haven't checked
what?
it out,
Oh,
the
what?
Swamp Cabbage Festival.
Can you eat that?
You can eat that. So it's basically the palmetto,
Would you
and
want? Hold on. Would you want to eat that?
yes, swamp cabbage is phenomenal. Maybe that's the Florida woman in me, but
Maybe,
it's kind of
maybe.
like an artichoke. So you have
Okay.
it's very little meat for how much work you're doing, but it is delightful when it's prepared correctly. So
All right.
Kenansville is home to the Swamp Cabbage Festival. But as you're driving down south, I mean, you're not too far off. Other than the ranches and the Everglades, which Kissimmee, which you just mentioned, is headwaters of the Everglades, which is Shingle Creek. There's not much until you get down to like Fort Lauderdale, Miami area. So, I mean, it's an overlooked area, and me personally, trying to conserve what we have here, I don't mind that it's overlooked.
Right. Absolutely. So you've you've lived in Florida your pretty much your whole life,
My entire life. I'm fifth
right?
generation here.
Okay.
My great grandmother, she passed away not too long ago. And she would tell me stories about how her mom came from Oklahoma off the Cherokee Reservation, and the men were kind of forced to walk, and the women got to
Sure.
ride in the covered wagon, and then they pioneered Osceola County. So I come from the Barber Bass family. So when you go to medieval times over in Kissimmee, the road behind it is Bass Road, and that's where we were at. So
I'm in awe of you. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like I am.
thank you.
I am because and again, like this is gonna sound so chauvinistic and fucking pigheaded. And I'm sorry,
By all
but like,
means, shoot
but
away.
like you're a gorgeous young woman,
Thank you.
right? And like you don't. This sounds so awesome. I'm gonna get canceled,
Just
and
go
but I'm
ahead and say it,
but like
because I
you don't
promise you,
you
I
don't
might meet you at that energy.
like I again northern boy. I'm a fucking asshole, and I apologize. But like I was expecting a totally different conversation than what we're having right
Really?
now. Yes.
What did you expect, if you don't mind me asking? Because I get that so often.
I didn't. Again, please, please. I
I don't
mean
take
this with
offense to
all
anything.
the love
I'm.
in my heart. I didn't expect you to be so intelligent. Like I know that sounds.
You
I'm
just made
like
my entire night. That is.
I can already hear everybody clicking. This podcast is over. But and I mean I don't mean that with any disrespect, like at all.
I don't take it that way. I get that a lot, and
Like
I'm gonna be very blunt with you as well. There's a part of me that enjoys the element of surprise
fuck
when I
yeah,
talk to people, because it's so fun.
right.
And again, I might get canceled for saying this, but I
Not on
grew
this
up
show,
watching The Simple Life with Paris Hilton and like Nicole.
right?
And there was one episode that just stuck with me from childhood. And it was when somebody asked her to do something, and there was like a little girl with a family that she was staying at with. And she turns to the little girl and she's like, I'm gonna let you in on some life advice. Whenever somebody asks you to do something and you play stupid and you do a horrible job of it, they will never ask you to do it again.
It's
And that is
true.
some advice that stuck with me into adulthood. So
It,
I
it is
love being
true.
able to play the bubbly blonde girl, and that was actually a
Yeah.
tagline of mine when I was on the show. So they pulled me aside and they're like, tell us how you might feel on a first date. And I was like, butterflies in the stomach, bubbles. But like, that's not what came out. It was like butterflies and bubbles. And it was a tagline that stuck, and it made me look so airheaded.
Right. Right.
So I thoroughly enjoy the element of surprise when I sit down and actually have a conversation with somebody.
And again, I am so here for it because honestly, it makes my life a lot easier. Because
Thank
it's like,
you.
when, like I said, I don't dig in, right? So, like, there's been times I've had guests on and I'm like, this is going to be fucking brutal. And it's like, the stories I get, I'm like, tell me more. You know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
like, that's how I feel right now. Like,
Well, thank you. I'm
no,
incredibly
thank
flattered.
you. Thank you. Listen, thank you for not being an airhead. Is I guess what I'm saying.
I
Um,
appreciate that.
yeah, I can we have done, by the time you come on or this episode gets released, we're gonna be reaching close to 300.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
we're getting there,
That's
and
amazing.
yeah, and some of the stories I've been told, it's been brutal.
Oh, I'm sure.
You
I
know,
am positive.
so so with all that being said, right? So how do you have? Did you rodeo? Have you rodeoed your whole life? Is that how
I
you got
haven't.
into?
So I grew up rodeo adjacent. I had friends that had horses. I had friends that barrel raced. Caitlin Totoli, she was kind of like a babysitter situation. It was my mom's friend's daughter.
Who's
She was
that?
a huge she was like a huge barrel racer here
Okay,
locally, and now she teaches. I had a lot of friends and family members that were like not like family members, but they were always around. They were on
yeah,
the mounted patrol for the sheriff's office, and
nice.
so I grew up adjacent to it. My dad was always one of those like, why have a horse when you have to like ride it every day and you gotta feed it? And he's like, a dirt bike or a motorcycle, you just put gas in it. And if you don't feel like riding it that day, you don't ride it that day. If you go too long without riding a horse, you're gonna have issues. So, I make the joke a lot that I am the oddball of the family, and
Yeah.
it sticks because and it tracks as well. I was the yee yee kid for, and I'm the oldest daughter. I'm the only
Did you say
daughter.
the yee yee
I was
kid?
the yee yee kid.
Like,
Yee yee.
okay.
um, so I grew up on a street with all boys,
Okay,
and I loved my Barbies. I loved playing dress up, but I would always get stuck playing boy games. And I, for the longest time, I was the only girl in my family. And even like as I got older, like my cousin Kaylee, she's younger than me, so we didn't really, like connect the
sure.
way that like somebody closer in age would. So I would always get stuck playing boy games at like every get together, everything. So I grew up kind of tomboyish,
All right.
and I mean it tracks into adulthood because I'm not afraid of anything, and I think that terrifies my family because I'm the
Right.
one that's constantly like off doing something, and it's
And that
become like a
terrifies
running joke.
dudes too.
Oh yes, it
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
yep, that's part of the reason why I had to go on a show because at
Ah,
any given moment, the running joke is Kylie's on a side quest. So my friend FaceTimes me the other day and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing this weekend? Like, what are you up to? We're all going to Halloween Horror Nights, which is put on by Universal Studios here because it's spooky season."
right.
And I'm like, I pick up the FaceTime and I'm in a tank. And he's like, "Where are you right now?"
Right.
I'm
Well, I saw
always
that.
on some crazy side quest.
Right. I saw that on your Instagram. I'm like, what the fuck is this girl doing? I'm like, what is this girl doing?
I could be skydiving, I could be in a tank, I could be diving one day, horseback riding, you name it. I'm always on a side quest.
No,
And
yeah, because like I see some of the shit you've done, and I'm like it
why?
doesn't make sense. Right. Right.
A lot of people ask me why. And
Right.
it's one of those things that like I don't know if it's the sense of adventure. I don't know if it's the FOMO of coulda woulda shoulda. And maybe that is it because I had a really bad TBI concussion in high school
Okay.
and I was playing soccer and it drastically changed the course and narrative of my life. And it's one of those things where like a lot of people ask me if I could go back and stop it from happening if I would. And the truth is, I wouldn't because
No,
it's
sure.
made me who I am today. And
Absolutely.
one of the things that I took from that incident was life is short and you never know when's your last day. So
Right.
I
Right.
always say yes to everything and I try to do an experience as much as possible. And maybe it is the FOMO aspect of it, but my biggest fear is being that old lady sitting in the chair with Paw sitting next to you and the grandkids are coming up and they're like, "Hey, have you ever done this? What about that? Have you done this? Mom did this." And I want to have stories to share and tell. And obviously right now I'm not a mom, not married. Um but I get to have the cool aunt lore, which is really really awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm both the example of what not to do and also like if you have questions go ask Aunt Kylie, which I love
Yeah.
that.
That's awesome. That is so. I'm gonna go back a little bit. Now, like when you do go out and do things, right? Like quote
Mhm.
unquote normal shit, right? Like if you were to
Okay.
go to Halloween Horror Nights or go wherever, do just like normal people things, right? Do
Texas
people know who?
Roadhouse.
Do people know who you are?
Um there's been instances.
Have there?
There have been instances. I've been spotted, and I thought it was just like a Florida thing because again, fifth generation, I've been here forever.
Right.
Growing up, people know me and people know of me, which is also something that's funny. And then the show happened. And I've been at Pendleton Roundup last year, and there's been other stuff. Texas, I went to Fort Worth Stockyards, and people recognize me, but I thought people would recognize me from the show, and people just recognize me from social media.
Well,
So
nobody
it's
watched that show, Kylie.
nobody. I mean, some people did. Some season two
I
fell off a little bit from what I
listen. This
heard,
is the
but
first time I've ever heard of that show.
it's
So,
basically farmersonly.com, but like make it a dating show.
farmers.
You don't have to be lonely
Yeah, no. For farmers only, I do have to be on lonely.
at farmersonly.com. So I've gotten recognized a handful of times. Most of the time, 99% of the time, it's when I'm at a local event. I just did a rodeo for children with special needs, which was the Holly Brewer Adaptive Rodeo out of Bartow, which is where Nathan Smothers from season 2 of the show is from. So again, we get to come back full circle to Central Florida agriculture spaces and just feeding into that environment and how nurturing
Yeah.
it is and how exciting it is for the kids. So I got recognized there, obviously. That was my second year volunteering with them. But the worst place to get recognized, and I have to tell you this, is at the grocery store after the gym. Or like in line at Chipotle or at the barbecue spot when I'm like greasy and gross. Or when I'm coming back from like riding horses and I'm filthy and they're like, "Oh my God, Kylie, can I get a picture?" And it has happened. And I'm like, "Yeah, you can. Okay."
Well, why don't you just tell them to fuck off?
Oh, I couldn't do that. I don't
No,
have a heart for that.
no.
I'm very non-confrontational, and that's what a
Okay.
lot of people don't see because they see my
Sure.
social media
Yeah.
and they see the persona and they see that like I lift, so I'm not entirely like scrawny. Like I look intimidating. Like I'm just gonna come out and say it. I to a lot of people I look intimidating,
Right.
and I'm not. There's not a mean bone in my
Now,
body.
now
Like
let me. Is it intimidating or unapproachable?
I don't know, honestly. I've gotten both, but I have a
Because
hard time saying
like
no.
I I'm pretty confident in myself, right? But if I were to see you out in public, I would never be like, "Hey, what's up?" Not in a
Really?
million years, really. But that could be more me. You know what I mean? That could
Maybe.
be more 100%.
I don't know, cause like to me, I'm just like like off in La La Land
Right.
90% of the time. So,
I,
but I mean,
I
I guess I could see it.
I mean, I think a
Maybe.
younger version of me might have, but like, and I've talked about it on this show a million times, and I'm sure people have sick of fucking hearing about it because I'm sick of talking about it. But like, I'm going through a divorce, so my confidence level is pretty low. You know what I mean? And I think that's
Yeah.
just natural, right?
Oh, of course. In this season of your life, I would imagine
Right,
so. That's
right.
got to come
Like,
with it. The
right.
territory.
I barely like. I have a tough time saying hi to my kids, and they're mine. You know, you know.
Yeah. No, I get that. And I think that it's just different seasons of your life because um back to like being the only girl growing up on the street growing up,
Yeah,
there was a point in time where like I call it the doormat to matador transition. And that's so I was always like the shy, quiet girl,
sure.
especially middle school. Especially in middle school, I was a huge nerd. I was on debate team. I would read my books. I would not hang out with anybody. I was just a loner and quiet and shy. And then high school happened, and I got into sports, and that's where I really found my community because when you're playing team sports, you have to communicate. So it pushed
Right.
me out of my comfort zone, and I remember looking back how shy and quiet and how everything the world was just terrifying. And it took me being around people that were not just like minded, but like forced me out of that zone to
Right.
get past it. And that's now I accredit a lot of my team building skills, a lot of my communication skills from sports. And it's just one of those things that different seasons of your life are different versions of
Yeah.
you.
Absolutely. Now you don't have to give me and this is so rude to ask, and
Oh, go ahead,
I
shoot
mean,
it.
we're at this point of this conversation. I mean, I've called you pretty and stupid in the same sentence, so um, you don't have to tell me a number, but what is like your age? Where do you fall in the line of like how old you are ish?
Like how old I am?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm 27. I have no.
Oh,
That's not.
all right,
I have no problem saying that
all right,
because I get carded a lot. I have a baby face. I have a very round face, so I'm very upfront. I'm 27.
all right. Now the way. because so I'm 10 years older than you, right? And like a lot of people are like, oh, 10 years, that's nothing. But in the way we've grown up, it's a lot,
Oh yeah.
right? So like when I was 27, I was about to have my first child, yada yada yada. That's totally different story. But like I didn't grow up in a world of constant social media and all
Oh
that,
yeah.
right? So like for somebody like you and you in the space you're in, in that quote unquote, we'll call you, for lack of a better term, that influencer space, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's all you've ever really known.
I mean, not really, because like I remember um not having a cell phone. I would have my books. I would have to like over communicate, which again I was awful at the time.
Sure.
What time practice was over, and if I got it wrong, then I would just have to stick around and wait for my parents to get there. And if I got it too early, then I would get chewed out. But it was one of those like learning curves, and I'm gonna be very blunt here. I envy the generation before me that got to experience kind of adulthood without the pressures of social media and the societal conformity
So
that
like
comes along with that.
like me.
Yes,
Yeah.
I envy the heck out of it because you guys truly got a really not everybody got a good childhood, but everybody got like a universal experience of like
Yeah.
going over to a friend's house and not having cell phones and not,
Yeah.
losing that moment. But
Yeah.
I remember getting my phone in high school. I remember when Instagram first started and there was like four filters you could use. And I'd make this joke all the time. I had like maybe 10 friends and I would be so excited when I would get 10 likes on a post because it would say 10 and not all these people. And I felt so cool. Um, I remember before stories and reels. I remember when Vine was a thing. Oh my gosh, I loved Vine.
See, like
Um,
I missed Vine because I think I was in that like
you're just outside of that gap because like Vine was going on
yeah,
when I was in high school, and Vine was cooler than Instagram because it was funny, and Twitter was
yeah.
brand new too, so
Like I
everything
had
was
Vine,
new.
but I came in too late,
Oh yeah,
you
because
know?
it didn't last very long, and then TikTok used
No.
to be Musically, which was the other thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was kind of like annoying kids doing like little dances and stuff. I
Yeah.
remember that. Snapchat was brand new in high school. And then Yik Yak was a thing when I was in college, which I
I don't
loved.
even know what that
Yik Yak
is.
was like an anonymous posting forum where people could say different things
Oh, all right.
and like, hey, don't go to parking garage C. I just saw A, B, and C going on. Or hey, if you're going to Knight's Pub, which was a bar at the time that is now closed, take the back way. There's traffic, stuff like that.
All right.
But I grew up in that generation, and a part of me does envy, the college experience and high school without cell phones. And
Yep.
now I look at my friends are having kids because again, I'm 27. I'm in that age range.
Yeah.
Um, Everybody's getting married and settling down, and I see the iPads and I see like their behavior, and it irks me to my core
Dudes.
because I was never allowed to act like that.
Yeah.
I like that's why I had my books. And
You
even when I
know,
had my books, like you would have to put it down and engage and look out the
uh-huh.
window. And these kids, they don't have manners, and it
No.
blows my mind with these
And
iPad kids.
yeah, and it's funny you say that because I have three boys, right? And my oldest is a step, and he's gonna be 15 in April. And my wife, ex-wife, whatever, um, like she's from the city of Boston, and I live about an hour. I was living about an hour and change outside of the city. So when they were living in Boston, when they were traveling back and forth, that's when he finally got a device, right? And he was like 6 at the time.
Was it Game
And
Boy or Nintendo or what was
no,
it?
it was like an iPad. It was like
What?
an old phone, right?
Oh,
Because
okay.
the rides were so long.
Yeah.
And like last Christmas, we got all the boys iPads just to because it's like everybody has one, like
Everybody has one.
you know. And honestly, it's almost the worst thing we could have ever done.
Really?
Oh yeah, yeah. My youngest, he's while we're talking, he's going to be 5 on Friday. So by the time this comes out, he's already 5. But he is like so addicted to it,
Mm-hmm.
like where it's like, all right, dude, like you can have it for this amount of time and then you're done. And he's really good about it, but it.
Well, Well, it's the instant dopamine responses that come
Right.
along with
And
the
it
apps and
be
the other stuff. Because I remember when I never had a PSP. I had my Game Boy and I had my Nintendo DS.
yeah,
And I remember like mine was the cobalt blue one, and I felt so cool. And then my Game Boy was another blue one, but like my friend had a pink one. And I remember like playing games in the back seat, or even like you could watch episodes of SpongeBob or old Nickelodeon shows on the Game Boy.
yeah,
And you would have like obviously your screen time would be monitored, at least when in my household.
yeah,
But just one of those things, like it does become addicting. Like you do
yeah,
have like your Nintendogs where you got to check on them, and it becomes like that instant dopamine response when like you pass a level, and now you're seeing it where it's unrestricted. And I think there should be a limit on unsupervised internet access to young children, especially
yeah,
as
yeah,
an influencer, especially being on my side of things and seeing the things I've seen and hearing the things I've seen, and also being in that tester generation that grew up with the chat rooms and grew up with Omegle and
yeah.
all the memes. I growing up that way and seeing what it's become, absolutely. I think it
Right,
should be limited, but it becomes addicting. And it's not just
right.
to children, it's also to adults, because
Yeah,
maybe not for the sake of like us, for example, but there have been guys I've dated where they cannot mentally check out of the video game. Like they have to finish the game, and it doesn't matter what you have going on, it does not matter what's going on in life. It does become an addiction.
yeah,
And it's just one of those things, I suppose, where you feel maybe as a parent, and that I see it with my friends that are now parents, the societal pressure to conform to getting your kids iPads and video games. And I'm all for it. I
yeah.
think that there's definitely a time and a place,
Sure.
especially when you're trying to watch a movie with your friends and you're at their house and you're sick and tired of watching Disney Plus. And
Right.
you're like, all right, take the iPad and go to the other room. Like we're
Yeah.
we're gonna go
Like
watch like an episode
they've
or
become
TV.
they've almost become babysitters.
Oh yeah, it's exactly a babysitter. I have
Yeah.
friends that have very very young children, and they do like the Miss Rachel or
Yeah.
Blip
Oh yeah,
Boppy.
yeah,
Blip,
yeah,
is
yeah,
it
yeah.
Blippy or
Blippy,
Bloppy?
Blippy.
Yeah, because she said that the one of them, the dude, Blippy, is hot.
Yeah.
I don't know, I've never seen it, but she's like, man, I'm sitting there the other day, I'm like, damn, Blippy.
No, like Miss. No, we could go
Is
on a
Miss
whole
Rachel the
fuck.
hot one? I don't know.
I mean, Miss Rachel isn't bad looking. You know what I mean? But she's, but that's the thing. Like Miss Rachel came out, and my kids were already like too old for that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even though I have a 5-year-old, right?
Of
He
course.
missed it. And a lot of that was because he didn't have access to it.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, for us, it's Bluey and
Oh, I love Bluey. I'm
Blue.
not gonna diss on Bluey. I
Dude,
as an
Bluey is
adult will
the
sit and watch Bluey.
yeah. He'll leave here and like we'll be watching Bluey and like I'll catch myself watching like hours later. I was like, oh
It's not
shit,
bad. It's
it's
not
not. It's
bad at
great.
all.
Like the dad makes all other dads, like real dads, look like pieces of shit, but that's fine. You know, it is what it is. Um, but yeah, you know, going back to the whole social media thing, like,
Hmm.
you know, doing this podcast and having the reach that we have gotten to, dude, I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, it's like a drug. Like,
Oh yeah,
you know, the first thing I do every morning is I look like what's happened overnight. You know, I turn my
it's like
notifications
checking the
off.
paper.
Right, right. You know, and it's like I see those numbers grow, and I'm like,
It's
they like me,
exciting.
right?
It's exciting because you're
Right.
growing your brand, and your brand is a reflection of you and your personality, and that's one of the things that I explain to a lot of other young adults. Um, so again, I don't post about it anymore, but there was a point in time where I used to be a part of the Miss America organization as a local title holder for about 4 years. It paid my way through college. I got a really great scholarship opportunity from it, and it
Okay.
leveraged me to have networking and marketing skills that are now
So
really helping me in adulthood.
I'm gonna
But one
I'm
of the
gonna
things that I
pause
tell
you.
young girls, oh, go ahead.
Why did you stop, or is that a whole story?
To summarize, it was never an intention to get involved with it.
Okay.
I kind of slipped and fell into it, is the
All
running
right.
joke.
Fair enough.
But one of the things that I use it for, my experiences, is to educate other young girls about why your personal brand is a reflection of you, and why it's so important to cultivate that in the age of social media, as you grow into adulthood, because it does become kind of like a backup plan for as the world is changing. For
Right.
example, my background's in marketing. I worked for two different construction companies. We're in the same building. I ran the call center. I worked in marketing, and COVID happened. Construction companies floundered, and I got laid off. And then the company reopened, and after being tanked, and they don't need me anymore. And a lot of companies, they turn around, they're like, oh, well, we'll just hire the boss's niece who does marketing, but it's just Canva and a couple crash courses. She doesn't really know what she's doing, and you see it all the time. Um, but it is what it is. So instead of going out and getting another job because it was peak COVID and nobody was hiring, I decided to pour all my education into my personal brand and my social media. And then it just cultivated and grew and grew and grew to where now I'm doing sponsorship acquisitions for big events. And I'm very, very grateful for this opportunity. And it kind of in part came from my experience and education from the Miss America organization. But I never grew up in pageants. Like I said, I grew up a tomboy. I wasn't a girly girl. I mean, I loved my girly girl stuff. I just never had the opportunity to like experience it.
Sure.
I make the joke all the time. I really wanted a little sister. I really wanted a little sister, and I got my brother, and I love him dearly. And I'm very grateful that I didn't get a little sister because I have the feeling that we probably would have butt heads. But through the Miss America organization, I gained over 50 sisters,
Yeah.
and we all still keep in touch. We're all still very good friends, and it was one of those things where I'm going to sound so asinine for saying this, but I entered as a joke for the Miss Osceola pageant in 2019. It was $100 and it was like $5,000 of scholarship. And at that point in time, I was trying to enlist. But due to the TBI and some other stuff, I kept getting kickback from MEPS. And I'm like, God, please. Like, I prayed really hard over it. And I just wanted the opportunity to help because all my friends from high school were enlisted and they were getting deployed. And I just wanted to be a part of something greater. And I wanted to have the opportunity to give back to that community that I kind of grew up adjacent to. I come
Yeah.
from a family full of veterans. I've come from a family full of first responders. And I really just wanted to be a part of it. And it also would leverage me into the opportunity of pursuing an education without a bill looming over my head. So
Right.
um, I entered, and the video is still posted some places, but I was looking at the girl next to me, and her name is Amber Boykin, and she did my hair and makeup that day because I had no idea what I was doing, and I genuinely thought that this saint of a woman had won it, and I was in absolute shock when they called my name. And I went on to compete for Miss Florida, and I loved it so much that I came back 3 more years and competed for the title of Miss Florida. Never to because I would have loved to become Miss Florida, but at the end of the day, like I was just happy to be there and happy to be on that journey. And I was incredibly grateful for the opportunity. And then the running joke with pageants, and you see it all the time with the Bachelor series, is there's the pageant pipeline where girls do that and their whole idea is to transition to becoming an influencer and going on the Bachelor series. And the opportunity presented itself, but at the end of the day, I wanted to do something because there was other shows that had reached out, just because of my social media presence during that time in my life. But my big thing was my future kids could possibly see this, my future employers are going to see this, my parents are going to see this. And with the Bachelor franchise, they have the boom boom room, everybody knows it. And I couldn't bring myself to go through with it. So when Farmer Wants a Wife reared its head, and it wasn't called that, it wasn't pitched as that, I was like, you know what, this sounds a little bit more wholesome, that I feel comfortable with my dad watching it with me. So I
So
said, Sin.
what was it? Um.
So when they pitched it, they didn't have a name for it yet. They were basically calling it Homestead Stories, and I have like the picture of them picking me up at the Oklahoma City airport with the Homestead Stories sign.
Okay.
And the way that the producers had pitched it to me was, "Oh, you like Rip Wheeler from Yellowstone? Like what girl doesn't?" And it's not the fact that like Rip Wheeler is this insanely sexy, attractive guy because I mean, Cole Hauser's attractive. He's just not like everybody's cup of tea. It's the character of Rip Wheeler.
Right.
And when you enter the agricultural space, you see people that still have those old morals and values of family first and cultivating the lifestyle that a lot of people dream of having. I mean, I would love the opportunity to wake up and have a garden in my backyard and have like kids getting to be kids rather than having the screen time and getting to play in the dirt
Yeah.
like I did. I was
Right.
constantly in the dirt. So when they pitched it, I was like, you know what I've been picking for myself hasn't been working, so I'm gonna let a producer pick it for me and we'll see if it works out. And clearly it didn't, because here I sit. But it gave me a better opportunity, and I'm incredibly grateful for it.
I mean, I don't know. You're on the Boots and Whiskey podcast, so I
I am on
mean,
the Boots and Whiskey
so,
podcast.
some would say you've made it.
I, I people say that all the time, with not just about your podcast, but with how many followers I have, and I'm very realistic about it. That at any given opportunity, my pages could get banned. I'm very open about my feelings about government. I'm very open about my feelings about our first responders and veteran community, and where exactly I align in that spectrum. So, a lot of people say, like, oh my gosh, I would kill to have what you have. And I fully recognize and comprehend that, because I remember there was a time where, again, I was excited about the 10 likes just because it wouldn't say all my friends' individual names.
Yep.
And there was a thing that I said one time in an interview, and it was one of those things where I was like, oh, wow, okay, I didn't know I had that in me. But it was, take a step back and appreciate where you are, and appreciate how hard you had to work to get there. And by all means, be hungry for the next step.
Yeah.
Be hungry for the next mile marker. Be hungry for the next opportunity of what could come next.
Right.
Be on the lookout for it. But also make sure that you make the time to appreciate where exactly you are, because there was a point in time in the past where you would have given anything to be where you're at.
Nope.
And I think that a lot of other, and I'm again loosely saying influencer
Yeah.
people, they don't fully comprehend and remember that there was a time when they were excited about 10 likes.
Now let me ask you this, because I know I struggle with this, and I'm not like you only know who I am if I post my face on posts. But like, how's your imposter syndrome?
Ooh, ooh, it was bad even before this. It was bad before I even was on social media.
Yeah.
There's often times where I sit here and I think to myself, I don't deserve where I'm at.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's a common universal experience, because a lot of the other girl influencers that I have met, now I have met some really cool girls, but a lot of them feel, at least I feel, that they are very entitled. And I think that's where the misconception of how some of these girls are come from, because of their behavior in public. But I look at where I'm at, and there's often times where I forget where I'm at, and how
Oh,
many people, like, I can't mentally grasp how many people follow me. I was at a UCF game, for example, with my dad, and I love football. And we're sitting there, and I'm talking about like Instagram and stuff to him, and he's always asking questions. My dad's like one of my biggest fans, and I absolutely love him for it, because he doesn't understand what's going on, but he kind of understands what's going on.
sure.
And he looks at me and he's like, "Do you have any idea how many people that is?" And I was like, "No, not really." I'm like, "It's a lot." And he's like, look at the stadium. It's a packed house. The bounce house is packed, because that's what we call a UCF stadium. He's like, imagine three of these. You still have more than that. And he's like, that's how many people care about what you have to say. And it really hit me. And I was like,
Right.
why?
Right.
Which is,
Right.
I'm like, well, why do people care what I have to say?
Right.
And why does that make me any different than the person over here watching the same football game? And it's hard to grasp at
It
times. I'm
is.
going to be very, very blunt
Yeah.
about that. It's hard to grasp.
You know.
But I decide, I'm gonna make the most of it.
Yeah. I feel the same way, because it's like our brand and our style that I have built this to is very much my personality, where it's like I'm going to give you my opinion whether you asked for it or not. Right. Like, perfect example, like today, like, um, the volunteers athletic program or whatever posted like something about Zach Bryan, right? And I
Right.
ran with it, and I was like, "Hey, Zach Bryan's going to play Neyland Stadium." They didn't say that, but I just said, "Fuck it," and that's what we're going to say, because that's why else would you post that?
Of course.
While every other country music, whatever, is be like, "What does this mean?" Like, you know exactly what it means. Like, we're not going to fuck around and find out. We're going to just tell you what it means. And it works.
Of
Like,
course.
we put a spin on this that is very, I think it's what people think and feel, but in the Nashville realm, people are afraid to say certain things.
Oh, I can completely understand that. That's one of the reasons I've actually avoided Nashville up until this
Yeah,
point. As
yeah,
many times as I've been to that area, I've never been to Broadway. I've never been downtown. I've never been actually to Nashville. I've gone to like Murfreesboro and like where do they have the Mule Days Festival? Like that area.
No idea.
I've been there. But I haven't been to Nashville, and I
Yeah.
genuinely like. I would love to go. I have a ton of friends that live in the area, but I just don't want to get sucked into that culture. I
No.
see a lot of people from Florida, and we have some amazing music artists. One of them, I booked out to come to that adaptive rodeo this past weekend, and his name's Landon Owens. He's 19 years old, and this kid has an amazing head on his shoulders and a really bright future in front of him. And he has that soulful sound that I really,
Yeah.
really love, and I can't wait to see where this kid goes. And his goal is he wants to have the tour bus. He wants to live in Nashville. He wants to end up dating the girls in the music video. Like he wants the dream for
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
lot of young musicians.
Yeah.
And I see my friends that have moved out to Nashville and live on Broadway and bartend to try and like make ends meet while they pursue their music career, whether or not it's going to actually launch or not. And it blows my mind the lifestyle. It's almost
Yeah.
like moving to LA to become an actress. It
Right.
sucks you in and it kind of changes you. Sometimes for
Yeah.
the better. I'm not
Yep.
going to say it's not, but
Yep.
oftentimes for the worse.
Right. Right. Because it's, you have, I mean, I don't know, right? I'm not a musician. I never moved to Nashville, but like you have to have almost the mindset of nothing's going to stop me, but I'm not going to make it.
Hmm.
Like, I mean, at least I think so. From all the people I've talked and, we've talked to some of the biggest and some of the, you know, who are you? Yeah,
Of
you
course.
know, and it's the same kind of thing. Like, they don't call it a 10-year town for no reason.
It's very true.
Like the the Luke Combs of the world and the people that are, get fire lit under their ass and just happens. It's it's one in a million.
Oh, for sure. And there's so many music artists that I've seen, and this is not me dissing on anybody in particular,
No, of
but
course not.
I'm gonna go ahead and throw out Morgan Wallen. I
Never
there's
heard
a
of
hand
her.
there's a handful of good, Morgan Wallen songs,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't pay money to go see him in concert. There's a lot of music artists that haven't made it big, or they're just on the cusp of it.
Yep.
And I love a very specific sound. I love that deep, soulful, sad sound. There's nothing I love more than going to like our local dive bar where they don't care who I am
Right.
and throwing $20 in touch tunes and making everybody hate their life because I put on like tons of Keith Whitley and David Allan Coe and George Jones and everybody's like, God dang, Kylie. But I like that soulful,
Yeah.
sad sound that you get from like Kate Hoffman
Yeah.
and you get from I mean, older. I do like Zach Bryan songs, but it's like the same song over and over
Right.
again from what I saw.
Like, you
But
know, and I said that I said that to Cody Jinks. I was like, "Listen, dude, like you have tunes that if I'm having a good day I can listen to, and if I'm having a bad day I can still listen to." Like if I'm having a bad day, I'm throwing on Cody Jinks. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Because it's like I'd
well, I
rather
just saw
sit
him in
here and make
Tampa,
myself cry.
and I just saw him in Tampa, and one of the things, and he totally, there's no way in hell he saw this, but I cried. I'm gonna be very upfront. I'm not a crier. I hate crying, but I'm
I
sitting
love it.
there, and there was this dad and son, and I'm a big people watcher. I love people watching. But there was this dad and son, and it was just those two. And you could tell it was like one of their things was like Cody Jinks. And this kid did not miss a single word on any song. He sang to every single
I
song.
love that.
And the dad's just standing off to the side, watching this kid just like eyes as big as saucers, singing every song, like so excited that he's there. And he turns around while intermission's going on, and he gives his dad like this big hug. And like the dad's got to be like in his 50s, and he's got his arm around his son. And nobody saw this, but like he went like this, and he, all right, bud, that's good, like that kind of motion. I'm like I
Yeah.
was a puddle. I'm like. That's what this is about. That's what good music is about. Is
Right.
it
Well,
evokes emotions and
you
brings
know,
people together.
it's funny you say that because so earlier this year, well, in July, we saw Zach Bryan at Gillette, And Zach Bryan isn't played on the radio up here. Like,
Really?
just no, not at all. Now, Gillette Stadium holds like 60,000 people. And I've been to hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of shows. I have never seen a stadium that filled or a bar with 100 people in it sing every word to every song like that crowd did that night. And you know
It's a
what?
cool feeling. It is a
I
really cool feeling.
and like you, right? Like Zach Bryan, I could take or leave him, right? I like to troll him a lot on social media. I really do because it's fun. Like I think he means well, and I think he's one of those that like the fame went to him real fast.
Oh, for sure.
And
Doesn't mean he's not a good poet. A lot of
no,
people can
no,
separate like the music from the musician,
oh
and I
yeah,
think that's one of the things that like maybe my generation has an issue with talking about
yeah,
like how problematic, some of the older rock stars were.
right,
But you look at like um who's the music artist that released a song this year? It's gonna drive me nuts. I'll it'll come to me later, but heck, even George Jones, awful person.
yeah,
Awful person,
yeah,
one
yeah,
hell of a musician.
yeah.
And you have
Well,
to separate the two.
right. It's kind of like whenever when Morgan got into his trouble with a few years ago, and then when
With
Aldean
the
puts
chair?
out what's up?
With the chair?
No, not with the chair, with the N word.
Oh yeah.
Um, and then with Aldean and try that in a small town and all that, and it's like you said David Allen Coe, and like I always laugh because it's like I'm like if you're mad about these guys, like
Then
just
you would
wait
have
till
cut out for like real outlaw country, and that's what I
right,
love. Cause like
yeah,
the what was it? It was the tractor, the riding lawnmower incident actually happened in Lakeland.
the what?
So that happened in Florida when George Jones took the
Oh,
keys from
oh,
Tammy Wynette
right,
and
right,
went to
right,
the liquor store on the tractor. That was in Lakeland,
yeah,
Florida. And that's one of those things that are overlooked. There's a handful of bars here that, so my parents actually met at a country bar. They were dance partners, and it was called Sullivan's back in the day. And now it's better known as Cowboys. And one of my favorite little like tidbits, it's like a little I Spy game, I suppose. But I will go to the barn in Sanford, or I will go to Cowboys Orlando. And when you walk around in certain parts of the bar, you could see old ticket stubs from when George Jones would play there or Garth Brooks played there. You'll see like old pictures in black and white, like autographed on the wall from like these music artists that are legends now.
yeah,
And they got their start going bar to bar doing real outlaw country. And
right,
I think there was a story, I think it was Garth Brooks. He was in Australia at the time when he really made it big back in the 90s, and he had no idea because there weren't cell phones at the time. There was no social media. He had no idea until he got off the plane and everybody was losing their mind over him that he'd finally had like his big hit.
yeah,
And I can't remember if it was Rodeo or what, but it was one of those earlier albums, and he had come back from Australia and he had no idea. And it's just one of those things that is just so cool to me is country music history.
yeah, yeah. It's awesome. There's this I actually bought this book, talking about George Jones and Tammy Wynette. It's called I think it's hold on, I'm gonna look.
Go
Uh
ahead.
it's Cocaine and Rhinestones.
Ooh.
And it is like you can get it on audiobook on Spotify and stuff like that. And that's where I listen to most of it because I don't fucking read. But like I bought a hard version of the book because it was so fascinating. And they get really deep into everything.
I'm
Like
sure.
and like there's like we idolize these people, right? Even
And we
even
forget their
right
people.
right even down to Johnny Cash. Like everybody forgets how much of a son of a bitch he was for a time.
Oh, for
Like
sure.
and it's I don't know if you've ever seen the it's on Peacock or Paramount Plus or something, right? Um
Was it a
there's like
George and Tammy show or was it Tales from
no,
the Tour Bus?
it was about June Carter. And like it goes from like her like early childhood right up through her death, and like the relationship her and Johnny had, like people would call like now like toxic and all
Of
this
course.
stuff because it was like they were so codependent on each other, and it was very very fascinating. And it was
And you would have that back then. And that's one of the things that a lot of people overlook because people idolize, like, oh, I miss the type of love that like grandma and grandpa had, and you're very quick to forget that it was a different time
Right.
and people didn't leave situations. I mean, even in the 90s with Keith Whitley, a lot of people blamed Lori for a long, long time, and then you look back in retrospect when your emotions are out of the situation, you're like, yeah, yeah, she should
Right.
have left.
Right.
Nobody should be held responsible for that kind of stuff, you know. And
Right.
when we lost Keith Whitley, we lost an icon.
Yeah.
I love Keith Whitley's music. That was actually my parents' wedding song. Was the cover by what's her name? Alison Krauss of "When You Say Nothing at All."
Oh yeah. 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 Okay.
So it was
Yeah.
her Keith Whitley cover, and people just overlook, you know, at the end of the day, influencers, models, actors, actresses, musicians, they're people and they're
Yeah.
human and they're gonna
Yeah.
make mistakes. You
Right.
can't idolize people.
You're right. You can't. You can't. And going back to that, right? Like I saw this thing, and this is totally not. Maybe it is the same, but I read this little blurb on Facebook not too long ago, and like somebody broke down The Notebook, like the movie,
Mm.
and they were talking about the relationship the two of them had and how like toxic it was, and this, that, and the other thing, and it's like I think you're missing the point. I
I've
think
never
you
seen The Notebook, so I can't speak on that.
what.
I've never seen it. I know, I'm out of the loop.
Dude, it's like one of the top five movies of all time.
That's what people keep saying, but I get a lot of heat for
I
some of the
can't
movies I've never
listen.
seen.
I'm pushing 40, and I'm a straight male through and through, and I still can't get through it without crying.
Maybe that's why I won't watch it. I don't like the sad movies.
All right,
Um,
that's
like
fair,
Walk to Remember was one of those ones where I was like,
dude.
I can't.
That's brutal too.
Oh yeah, no. I
Brutal.
don't like a sad movie. I'm gonna have to sit down and watch it. My friend's been giving me all kinds of crap about it. There's a handful of movies I've never seen because I know it's gonna be sad. It's one of those things I've never
Like every
seen.
Nicholas Sparks movie is like, forget it. Like, just forget it. Can't. I can't.
I think the last sad movie that I saw that was along those lines was P.S. I Love You.
I've never seen that.
Really?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love
Isn't
it.
isn't Gerard Butler in that?
Oh, absolutely. That's why I watched it.
All right.
That's Leonidas. Are
Fair
you kidding?
enough. Is Oh, from 300 or
300,
500 or
yeah.
yeah.
You think
I've
I'm
only
not going to see that?
I've only
That's
seen that
Leonidas.
once.
You've not really seen 300 once?
Yeah. See, like when I
What?
think Gerard Butler, and again, I'm not gay, but I think Phantom of the Opera.
That was another one. I didn't realize, I didn't connect the dots for like the longest time. That and
Yeah.
the dude from The Conjuring was in that.
Yes.
I never connected that until like I'm
Yes.
like this guy looks really familiar, and then watching not Arrested Development, the TV show with the Gallagher's. I'm sitting there like,
Oh,
why does this girl
Shameless.
look? Yeah, Shameless. I'm watching Shameless. I'm
Yeah.
like, why does that girl look familiar? I'm like, that's Christine Daae.
Yay.
There's nothing gay about liking Phantom of the Opera. That
No.
movie is
Dude,
goated.
that was the first musical I ever saw.
It's really good.
It
It's
was really
really
good.
good.
It was really
Oh,
good.
for sure. I
Um
think maybe that's where like my love of Toxic Men started. That and like the Star Wars, the
yeah.
Star Wars prequels. I was all about Anakin.
Of course you
Full
were.
send, full
Of course you
send.
were.
Yeah, one of my first memories was actually seeing Phantom Menace in theaters with my dad. That was my
Um
first memory. It was like early 2000s. I don't remember exactly the year, but I remember being in the theater and seeing Jar Jar Binks and seeing like the always a bigger fish scene. That was like my first memory was Phantom Menace. But between Anakin and Gerard Butler as the Phantom, because like that would have been my choice. My adult life makes sense now.
the kid that plays Anakin, the older version, like the adult version.
Hayden Christensen.
Yes. He was in a
Yes.
movie before all the Star Wars movies called Life as a House.
Hmm.
And that movie, hunt that movie down because that one is fantastic.
I'm gonna have to just because it's got Hayden
Yes.
Christensen in it.
It was great. Like he plays like a shithead teenager and I don't want to give too much away, but like
Okay,
it's it's good.
I'll add it. I'll add it to the watch list. The
Yeah.
Notebook. Hayden Christensen as a teenager. You'll have to message me. I've
I
got a
will.
horrible
I will.
memory.
I'll shoot you a text about it.
Please do.
Uh,
I'm gonna have to just put a list together, like
I'm gonna
Captain
be like,
America, like of all
Kylie,
the
like,
movies I need to
right,
watch.
right, Kylie, you have to watch these movies, and then you need to report back.
Oh, got it.
Um,
Got it. We could do a follow-up episode. Hey,
right.
did you watch The Notebook? I did.
So speaking of The Conjuring, from where I am right now, where I live, the Conjuring house from the first movie is like 15 minutes away.
Do they do anything special for Halloween?
They do something special all the time.
I'm sure.
Like
I'm sure.
like the house you see in the movie, it looks nothing like the house that's actually there.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
And
like the
it's what
Amityville Horror House is like another one that is
well
like exactly the same.
right well the Amityville Horror House used to look the same and then they changed it also because of all the tourists.
Oh, I'm sure. Same thing with the house from American Horror Story season 1. It's all boarded up. People can't go near it now.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't that in LA though?
It was in LA. It sold like not too long after the show premiered,
Yeah.
obviously, but it's
Right.
just one of those things. Like it's a tourist attraction at a certain
I
point. Like Bella Swan's house in Twilight. That is on my bucket list. It's
never
up in
seen it.
so you've never seen Twilight. You've never seen Twilight, but you've seen The Notebook. Okay, so
Listen.
Bella's house in Twilight.
Glistening vampires wasn't my forte.
It was all
Okay.
my. It was all I cared about in middle school.
Jesus.
But it's a tourist attraction. You could actually. It's an Airbnb, and I'm like, girls trip, you know. Um, just one of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. Um. Damn. This has been a real pleasure.
Thank you.
No, no,
I bet
thank
it was
you.
one of those things where like you did not see any of this coming at
No,
all.
I expected this conversation to be over like 40 minutes ago.
You expected me to be a like airheaded blonde
I
girl.
did,
I
and
love
I'm
that.
sorry
I
I
love
did.
it when I'm underestimated.
I am so sorry I did. I feel like the biggest asshole in the entire world.
Oh, I get it a lot, and
Like,
I'm gonna be honest. I kind of pander to it on social media a lot.
right,
Just because it is my niche. It's my
right.
niche. People, it's what people want to see is
You
the
know,
dumb yeehaw girl stuff.
right. And you know what? I'm not gonna lie to you. Like before this conversation, that was a big reason why I reached out. It was like, you know, and
You thought it
again,
was gonna be like a bubbly
right,
Laramie from
right.
Yellowstone
I'm like,
type.
when this releases, you know, like who's not gonna want to hear a conversation with a hot girl, you know? And like, I'm sorry, that's just what like. I was talking to somebody today, and they were like, "Hey, who's coming up on the podcast? Who are you recording with?" And I'm like, "Oh, dude, check this out." And he looks at me, and goes, "No, you're not." I'm like, "No." She's like,
Surprise, Shawty!
she's gorgeous," and I was like, "Yeah."
Thank
And I'm
you.
like, "That's why she's coming on the podcast."
You know, I make the joke pretty frequently that looks get you in the door. Your
That
personality is what keeps you around.
that's
So,
true. That is
and
100% true.
I didn't. I grew up. I think I had a pretty normal childhood. But one of the
Yeah,
things that like from being a totally like awkward, quiet kid in middle school and even well into high school was I knew in the back of my head that like looks fade and
right.
anything could happen after my
Sure.
CTI after the accident. I knew that like anything could happen and you could be like horribly disfigured the next day. But if you're funny, and this was something I said on the show because Fox would feed us alcohol hand over fist and not feed us, and I have no filter, which is why I have no problem with you shooting the shit and saying what you got to say.
And I love that. I
Um,
love it.
one of the things I said on my one-on-one date with Landon was, you know, at the end of the day, if somebody's funny, their eyes are closed half the time anyway because you're laughing so hard.
It's true.
So do looks really matter the
It's true.
entire
Now,
time?
can I? We can edit this out, and this is more for maybe for like I guess this is my way of trying to get myself out of the doghouse for just having you on initially for being
Oh, jeez.
attractive. Um, I if you don't mind, can we talk about that a little bit? Um,
By all means.
do you feel? And again, if we go too far, please just say so, right?
Oh, I'll tell you, I have no filter. I will be very straightforward.
But do you feel like being an attractive young lady, right? I mean, even though you have a head on your shoulders and you're not a moron, right?
Hmm.
Do you feel over sexualized in this kind of thing?
You know, I do. Um, and we can leave this in. I would actually prefer to go ahead and clarify some things for some people
Yeah.
that may or may not have questions or may listen to the podcast or may not. But you know, it's one of those things that's unfortunate about
Right.
social media. It doesn't matter how funny I am. It doesn't matter how educated I am at the end of the day. And I learned this the hard way, which was a very big wake up call for me through the Miss America organization, was when you are in a professional space,
Hmm.
whether that was when I was working with the construction companies or even with the lobbying work I did with some veteran organizations and even with some volunteer work that I did with research organizations for TBI CTE, research and the connections between PTSD. Um, it was one of those things that, like, at the end of the day, it was very disheartening and still very much is that it doesn't matter. As long as I look the way I do, I'm not going to be taken seriously. And
Right.
it's seriously frustrating because, I'm back in school. I'm trying to start the conversation with organizations and I've gotten grants for organizations, and to be referred to behind closed doors and behind my back as the blonde bimbo, um, being referred to sexually behind my back,
Right.
I expect it. I'm used to it. It doesn't mean that a compliment is a compliment, but there's always that line that gets crossed.
Right. And
And
it doesn't mean
unfortunately,
it's
with social
okay though
media,
either.
no, no, no. But the other thing is, I'm just going to come out and say it. There's been jobs, and I've been applying to jobs, and it's just maybe the job market right now, but jobs that I was overqualified for. And maybe it is because I was overqualified for it, but I did ask for some feedback because I knew the hiring manager. It was a friend of a friend, and we were out at dinner maybe a couple months after. And I said, I really felt like I was qualified for that position that you guys had. Who did you guys end up hiring? Was it an internal hire? Which is what I immediately jumped to was, oh, they had an internal hire. Somebody was qualified for the position that has some rapport with the company. That's got to be it. I've applied for federal positions with Fish and Wildlife and other organizations within our state because I genuinely want to make a difference, and I know that I can. However, because of my social media, even though there's nothing I've ever posted at any point in time that I'm not comfortable with sharing with my grandmother or my grandfather or my dad,
Right.
or even future kids saying, like, there's nothing I feel like crosses the line of inappropriate or even plays with it.
Right.
Um, it sucks that behind closed doors, that's all I will ever be to a lot of people.
Right.
And that hiring manager turned around and he's like, I'm just going to be blunt with you. HR saw your social media, and because we have a lot of men employed here, we felt that it would be a serious issue to our current staff. Because you look the way you look, and it doesn't matter how educated you are. We actually ended up going with somebody that wasn't as qualified for the position as you because we felt that she would not be a potential HR hazard.
Wow.
And to know that, unfortunately, at the end of the day, because I look the way I do,
Right.
that's all it's going to be. And you could talk about the glass ceiling all you want, but people are human.
Right.
And you could say that you have your representation hired there. You could say A, B, and C, but at the end of the day, I know that part of the reason I went into the business that I'm in and doing the sponsorship acquisitions for events, even some organizations that I've worked with, whiskey companies that I won't name, I'm just a face.
Well, you can
And
name them
they
to
would,
me because we could use some of that money.
oh, absolutely. Sponsorship acquisition's my thing. So,
So
but there's companies where they would prefer to speak to a man.
really.
And yep, and there's people that assume that I am a man because of the way that I conduct myself through email. And my name's Kylie, which could easily be Kyle if they skim
Right.
it. So unfortunately, there's just people that are just mentally backdated,
Right.
kind of. And I just assume it's the same people that think that a doctor that has tattoos is less qualified for the position than a doctor that doesn't have tattoos.
Right.
It's just a dated way of thinking, and unfortunately, it is what it is, and it
Well,
sucks. But what you
I
gonna do?
I honestly I know we've joked about it, and
Oh, I'll joke all day.
and I honest to God, you know, I am sorry for my role I played in that with having you on.
Oh, I'm very upfront. I get it. I see what I post. I post what I post. I literally did that photo shoot this week with Tank America,
Yeah.
and I'm in. I've been a big fan of fur maps for a long time. Florida's very hot, and hunting here sucks because you are sweating the entire time.
Right.
Fur Maps is one of those companies where, like, with the pockets, which you don't find in a lot of women's clothing, super comfortable and it breathes. It's still yoga pants. I'm in yoga pants on top of a tank. I know exactly what people are thinking. So,
I don't know what you're talking
I
about.
I've gotta accept some of that blame.
Well, yeah, but like, okay, and like I think I really appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
You know,
I know I'm equally as guilty with some of the stuff I do, but
all
it
right,
doesn't teeter on the line of inappropriate at any point in time, and it's just unfortunate that in a professional setting I get looked down upon pretty often.
right, right.
It is
Like
what it is.
honestly, I wasn't looking down on you. I was just more like,
You're like, she's hot. We're
she's
gonna
hot
have a
and
conversation with
she's
her.
gonna bring eyeballs to the site. What? I'm not stupid.
Looks and what I said earlier, looks get you in the door, and the personality's what keeps you
That's
there.
right.
So,
And you know what? Your personality has kept you on this podcast for as long as it's been.
thank you. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
that. It's a
You know,
lot
I
longer than the 10 minutes you thought this was gonna
that's
last.
true. This podcast this episode is 40 minutes longer than I honestly thought it was going to be. I'm not
Nice.
yeah, and I'm not upset by it because I love long-winded, long-form conversation.
But everything from country music to whiskey to Fox.
Right, right. And we're not even I know you I'm sure you're busy. I mean, it's
Oh no,
9
it's 10 o'clock at night. We're good.
9:45. What else
I've
are we
got
going to
nothing
do?
better to do. Are you
Well,
kidding?
thanks. Thanks. Neither do I, Kylie. Thank you. No, I'm
Ah,
just I could be
friendly
sleeping.
fire, friendly fire.
I gotta deliver the mail tomorrow. Um, but speaking of whiskey, right?
Right.
Because we are the Boots and Whiskey podcast, do you have boots and or whiskey and whiskey that you prefer over others?
Absolutely, I do. Um, I I'm not gonna say connoisseur, because whiskey is a new thing for me. I am a big wine girl. Most of the stuff I do like gets looked down upon by my sommelier friends just because it's smoky. I love a good bourbon barrel aged wine. I love deep reds. That's my cup of tea.
Yeah.
But one of the things I've slowly started to transition to is my palate's just grown on me as I become an adult and my frontal lobe develops. Is different whiskeys. So Hooten and Young is one that I really, really love, and it's not just because of their background in the veteran space. They were both, I believe, Delta Force guys. They have phenomenal cigars. If you're a cigar person, I do have a little thing for cigars. But they are one of the only blends of cigar that I've ever come across where it blends not just smooth and it has the sweet outside, but it burns evenly. And it has been something that I've noticed in every single Hooten and Young cigar I have ever come across. Compared to other ones, they burn evenly. Even if you torch them wrong, they burn evenly. And it's just a consistent flavor and taste that you just don't come across with a lot of other manufacturers. But their whiskey it speaks for itself. They've got one that's aged in a wine cask, and I think it's Pinot Noir, and I got the privilege of sampling it. I actually ordered some. It's on the way to the house, and it is phenomenal. And it's got that deep
Oh,
oaky flavor. It's
yeah.
very smooth. It's a phenomenal whiskey. One that I do recommend that you try if you have not already is Silver Belly, which is Alan
Uh,
Jackson's whiskey
yeah.
that recently got sent to the house. I did a little taste
Yeah.
test on TikTok Live before I went fishing one day, and I wasn't expecting much. For a
No.
lot of these companies that have been around for a while, you have pretty consistent flavor and taste. But with newer companies that are owned by celebrities, Terramana, I think it's Casamigos is another one.
Yeah.
What's his face owns that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's
George
also like
Clooney.
aviation gin. I like gin.
Yeah.
I do prefer a good gin martini. Aviation's hit or miss. I could take it or leave it. There's nothing special about it except the fact that it's Ryan Reynolds.
Right.
So I expected that with the Alan Jackson whiskey.
I
And when I actually sat down and sampled it, it had apple undertones. And
yeah.
that was something that you don't see often with whiskey
Nope.
is the apple undertones. So it is perfect with cooked apples or anything cinnamony
Yeah.
for fall. So that is a very good whiskey. I do
Yeah.
recommend you try.
I had so Robbie Goldsmith and I have struck up a friendship over the last year or so, and he had sent me some stuff, and we had him on the podcast, and like the first time I opened it, I drank it with him on the phone,
Nice.
and I was like, damn, this is actually pretty good, like it, and
For a
because exactly
celebrity brand, it's very good.
yeah, it is one of the better celebrity brand anything out there.
Oh, for sure. And I think a lot of people just gas up certain brands because it is celebrity owned.
Yep.
but they forget that they have like nothing to do with it. Like I
Yeah.
really doubt that Britney Spears had anything to do with her perfume line type of thing.
Yeah.
So people gas it up, and it was just one of those where I was like, I I was very careful about, how I felt about it, and then I tried it. I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
that's good.
You
That's good
know,
stuff.
we we've made friends with 10th Mountain uh whiskey company out in Vail, Colorado. Their stuff is really good too.
Really?
Like, yeah, like I'm not a big bourbon guy, but their bourbon is actually to die for. Like
What
it's
about Oak and Eden?
I've never had it.
Really?
Yeah,
So Forey from Yellowstone, I got to go to a bottle signing of his, and I got their. I know it's not technically a espresso martini, but I got their coffee flavored whiskey.
sure.
Phenomenal way to
Yeah,
make an espresso martini. Oh my gosh, it's so smooth. It's got those smoky undertones, but also when you mix it all together, it's dangerous. It's
yeah,
so good.
yeah,
There's a couple bourbon barrel aged well, actually, it was a bourbon. It was a blackberry bourbon I tried. I wish I had gotten the name. It was at Pendleton Roundup last year, and we all ended up out by the stock trailers. Everybody does, and we're just sitting there. Somebody's smoking elk. Somebody did like a jalapeno cheese bread in the smoker, and we're just sitting out there. People are picking on the guitars, and I followed the smell of elk and the sound of guitar music, and I ended up there, and I'm like, oh, what's this? What's that? And I tried this really good blackberry bourbon, and I wish to God I had gotten the name because it haunts me how good this was. And Oregon's just one of those really cool spots where you never know what you're going to come across when it comes to the alcohol space. I mean, the breweries are phenomenal, the wineries are phenomenal. I'm just blown away every time I'm out that way.
yeah.
Yep.
Huh. Yeah, for what we're able to get up here, it's very, run of the mill kind of
Your
things.
wild turkey type situations.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, you'll have that little Jim Beam action.
yeah, yeah. Like every now and again, like a bottle of Blanton's will pop up somewhere, and it's like $350, and it's
Of
like,
course.
what the fuck? What are you doing?
I did a s'mores and pours tasting with Westgate down at the River Ranch in Florida, down in Polk County, and I had never had Blanton's whiskey before, and they're explaining it to me, and I was completely, for lack of better phrasing, faded at that point in time, and I did not comprehend how expensive it was,
Yeah,
and I'm just throwing it down on Westgate's dime. I'm like, this is so good, and then they explained what Blanton's was and how expensive it was, and I was like,
yeah,
we're in different tax brackets.
yeah, yeah,
We are
yeah.
in
I
different tax brackets,
A
brother.
couple of years ago, my
I
an
can't
old
afford to like this
boss,
as much as I do.
right? A couple of years ago, an old boss of mine got me a bottle of Blanton's for Christmas,
Oh wow.
and I just recently opened it. Because it's like I know what that
It's a
costs.
special occasion
Right.
drink.
Yeah.
And then
Like
you
I
gotta
have
collect the tops too while you're at it.
well, yeah, I have actually. There's a bar that we partner with, and they have the tops, and I'm like, I'm taking them as you go through the bottles. I'm
You're
taking
coming
them.
home with me.
Right. Um, but like my wife, ex-wife, I'm gonna always probably call her my wife. She bought me a bottle of Johnny Walker Blue for Christmas, probably like
Ooh.
2 years ago, 3 years ago, and like I still haven't opened that yet either.
You
Like,
gotta save certain things for special occasions. There's a couple of bottles of wine that I've saved for
yeah,
special occasions that I'm hoping happen in my future one day. So
yeah,
it's just one of those things. I think
it
everybody
is.
has like their little thing.
Yep,
Boots wise though, there's a handful of I've never had a pair of Lucchese's.
me
I've
neither.
never right now my go-to is Twisted X. I'm on the Feet on the Street program, which is really cool because I get a little bit of a kickback when I buy new stuff, and I'm always buying new stuff. But being somebody that actually kind of works ag adjacent,
Yeah,
getting up and down off horses, helping out people and ranchers, especially after the hurricanes here, um, doing what I do, what I have noticed from boots that have been sent to me by private people that make them by hand, which are phenomenal. They are
yeah,
stunning. It's almost like little art pieces that I have more on horseback riding that I probably shouldn't. But Twisted X has like this shock absorbency in the heels, and
really.
that's something that does come into handy because I'm up down up down up down. I'm getting down. I'm helping. I'm trying my hand at breakaway roping, and all I'm doing is waving them by. I'm trying my best. And when I have a good run, I will actually post it on social media because everybody's a horse trainer and everybody's a critic, and I cannot take that.
Right.
So, right now where it's the up down, and helping out where I can, I gotta say Twisted X really just, they're worth their weight in gold,
Nice.
especially for what I use them for. Right now, my favorite pair of Twisted X boots are the Rancher's Reserve, which they're men's boots, but they are so comfortable and they are very, very slick looking. If you haven't taken the chance to look at them, I really recommend taking a look at the Rancher's Reserve. But my favorite pair right now, because it's fall and it's been really wet here in Florida with the storms, is my Viper Guard boots, and they're waterproof. They have the shock absorbency in the heel. I could walk all day through the woods in them. They're super comfortable. I don't have to worry about getting snake bit or stepping on anything. And Florida is like the Australia of the United States, so I don't have to worry about anything. But I actually wore those same pair of boots that I'm wearing hunting right now on a trail ride, back in January. And when I tell you I was up to my knees in water and my feet stayed dry, you don't come across that often. So
Damn.
they are worth their weight in gold to me.
Yeah.
I like
I
a
gotta
good
check those
functional
out.
boot. I
Cause
can't. I
like
I don't like the expensive stuff that I'm not gonna wear because I'm worried about messing it up.
right,
I like the stuff that I can actually use and
right.
abuse.
Like I have I got a my my wife got
My wife.
got me a pair of Ariats for my birthday a few years ago. And those are I wear them all the time. You know, and
My first pair of cowboy boots were Ariats.
I have, I've had them now 4 years, and
They
they
hold up.
st- right, they hold up.
They
And
hold
then
up.
I got sent a pair of Dixon boots that are gorgeous, and they're black, and they're like my dress shoe.
They're nice shoes.
Right. And like I'm afraid to put those on because
Hmm.
like I go to the website and see how much they're worth, and I'm like, son of a bitch.
That's why I would love the opportunity to work with those brands, but I am so terrified of getting
Right.
something really nice and messing it up because I'm again, I grew up with all boys. I love girly girl pretty things, but I'm realistically am very hard on jewelry and shoes.
Right.
So I've never been like I have some really nice pieces that I only come out for like special occasions,
Sure.
but if it's fake, I break it so quick.
Yeah.
And shoes, I scuff them. I'm getting stepped on. I'm just really hard on them, and that's why I recommend a lot of people to invest in some good leather care products.
Yeah.
But when it's not leather and it's like plasticky or pleather, like there's so many high heels. Even when I did pageants, that just they got so chewed up. There was a pair of heels that I loved, and they were super comfortable. I wish I could remember the name, but I wore them so frequently, I like wore the name off of them. And when I did all my work in DC, those were what I wore. And for those of you who are listening to the podcast that haven't been to DC, bring a pair of flats. It is uphill, downhill. Those are some old roads. It is
Yeah.
hard to walk through DC in heels. It is
Yeah.
one of those things where like the people that have been there know, and they keep little flats in their purse and they pull them out. I was unprepared. I had never done that before where I wasn't wearing tennis shoes. I didn't pay attention at the time, and my feet were chewed on.
Yeah.
They were bleeding by the end of it, but those heels really held up. But when I tell you that they look scuffed and chipped, they had seen hell and back. So I was really, it was a sad day when I had to retire those shoes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, damn girl. I could talk to you all night. I
Uh,
like this is
well, I
this
appreciate it.
this
That
has
means the
been
world, especially
this has
since you
been a
thought this
lot of
podcast
fun.
was only going to be 10 minutes. But
No, not 10. I try to pull it to at least a half an hour.
oh, come on.
Um
I can throw some friendly fire out
I
there.
love it. I love it. I love it. But yeah, man, I love what you're doing. I love your story.
Thank you
You
so
know,
much.
it's been a great pleasure getting to know you, and I'm it's honestly an honor to call you a friend.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I really
Of course.
appreciate you taking the time to reach out and follow
Yeah.
up with me and bearing with me as we had to work around scheduling conflicts. But
Yeah.
I'm excited about this episode, and
Yeah.
I'm excited to go check out Hayden Christensen pre Star Wars. So
Dude, I'm telling you, glass house. What is it called? What did I call it? Life is a house. That's what it was.
life is a
Life is a
house.
life.
Life is a house and the Notebook are on the to do list.
You got to do it.
Oh
You
man.
got to do it. Get it?
You're gonna get tagged in my story when I'm like sobbing a couple days from now. I'm like, I hate you. This is awful. I can't believe you had me watch this sad movie.
Yeah,
I don't do
I'm
sad
telling
movies
you,
very
you
well,
will.
so.
If you don't cry at both of those movies, you have zero soul.
See, people watch, movies all the time and they don't cry. Marley and me, I'm a puddle. I can't handle it. And same thing with Lonesome Dove. If you are an adult that has seen Lonesome Dove and have not cried, you're not human, and I don't trust you.
I've never
So,
seen Lonesome Dove.
what? Okay, you can't get on to me about the Notebook then.
Sorry. Why? Which?
Oh
Who's
man,
in that?
Robert Duvall.
Yeah, I've never seen it.
But that's like an OG cowboy movie. Okay, so here's your homework assignment. You've got to go
Okay.
watch Lonesome Dove. I'm gonna go watch the Notebook.
Okay.
And Life is a House.
Sounds good. And then we'll compare notes.
But we'll share notes. We'll share
All right.
notes. All
Sounds
right.
good. All
Thank
right,
you so
Kylie.
much for the time. I
Thank you. I
appreciate being on the
appreciate you so
show.
much.
Thank you.
We'll talk soon.
Talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, there you have it, everyone. Our conversation with Kylie Blakely. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed having it. Such a sweetheart. Like, I absolutely love this young lady. She is absolutely incredible. Um, so thank you again for being here and joining us. And then, as promised, here's our little reviews of the two shows we saw this weekend. Um, First Thursday night, Charles Wesley Godwin at the Roadrunner in Boston. Roadrunner is a great venue. If you're not a local to here, um, and then you come up here and there's a show, go see it at the Roadrunner. Great, great place. Bowery Boston, I think, does all their shows. So good people, the whole nine yards. So we saw Charles Wesley Godwin in the Allegheny High last year at, what was it, Royale. Um, Great show. Smaller venue. This year, bigger venue, bigger audience. I didn't like this year's show as much as last year's. Um, Charles and the band were fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Like, not a he could have played the fucking Bible, right, and it would have been fine. What my problem was the crowd. Last year, everybody in the audience sang every note to every song, and I guess that's what happens, right? And you get a little bit bigger, you get a bigger venue, the whole nine yards, right? This year's crowd was just, I don't know, just didn't seem like they were there, right? Um, the set list was all right. I would have taken out some songs. I would have put in other songs. Uh, I don't make that kind of money, so I guess I mean, the set list was fine. It was great. Like I said, he could have sang anything. It would have been great, and it was. There were just some songs I wish I would have heard. Um, and maybe it was a good thing I didn't hear those songs. We'll just leave it at that. So yeah, so Charles, Allegheny High, thank you guys so much for coming out to Boston again. Had a great time with you. And then we got to Friday night. Friday night we had Shane Smith and the fucking Saints at the Worcester Palladium. I gotta say, this is a band, and you guys, anybody that watches this or listens to this or follows our social media, you know my soft spot for Shane and the boys. Um, Absolutely incredible show. Every song, not a miss. And this is probably a bias review, right? Because that, like I said, Shane could have came out, sang three notes of a song, and said, "You know what, fuck this, I'm not doing this tonight," and walked off, and I'd be like, "That was the greatest show ever." Um, but I gotta say, 3 years ago, I stumbled across Shane Smith and the Saints when they opened up for Whiskey Myers. Right, I was early on in this, um, and I shot my shot with them, and they were on the rise, and they still are. And some people would say that they're exceeding expectations, and they've had a hell of a run themselves. We've had Shane on the podcast now twice, working on a third time, working on a lot of those guys to be on, but it's one of those things where their crew has been so kind and so generous to me and to this show. They they have my full support no matter what. And again, the bias, right? But that's it. If you ever can, go see Shane Smith and the Saints. If they're ever around your area, go see them. You will not be disappointed. If you don't know who they are, go check them out. again, no disappointment here. So that's it. Happy Thanksgiving again to everybody. We hope you have a wonderful time with your family, friends, loved ones, whatever you do. Um, just remember, when you're sitting down to dinner on Thursday, there's a lot to be thankful for. Um, that's where we'll leave it. um, so thank you to everybody for being here. From the bottom of my heart, happy Thanksgiving. Until next week, guys, keep those boots on the ground, the whiskey in the glass. And remember, everything here is all about real people, real stories, real country. We'll see you next week, guys. Cheers.